This is my 5-minute thesis presentation. The topic of my research was the anti-Sikh pogroms of 1984. What I analyzed was not only the fusion of religion and state, but more specifically, my research question was, did the events that occurred from November 1st through November 4th, 1984, constitute a genocide of people of the Sikh faith within India? My argument was that yes, they did, for they were in an orchestrated and politically contrived inter-religious violence initiated by Hindu nationalists and also members within the ruling party of India, the Indian National Congress, among them the civilian population that ideology, which ended in the killing of 30,000 Indian Sikhs. What I'd like to put forth is that this is also important to the viewers at home, because what we see in present day India is a similar conflict, not to Sikhs, but to the Muslims, and an constitutional amendment regarding the citizenship of Muslims. So we see that this is still very topical of what is happening in modern India, although what I'm going to discuss is of 1984. Now, what I'd like to drive home to the viewer is that this is similar to the Armenian genocide, which is in the shadow of Turkish denial, because that's what's happened to the Sikhs of India, and that although 30,000 lives were lost, to this day in 2020, the state ignores calling this a genocide and has never even given a formal apology to the millions of Sikhs in India. In my research, I use a mixed methods approach. I analyze, I integrate, and I collected quantitative and qualitative data, and I tested a singular novel hypothesis. Did an increase in hate rhetoric from the state in that 4-day period lead to an increase in state violence? 30,000 deaths of Sikh individuals. I triangulated hate rhetoric by looking at the TV, by looking at the radio, and also by looking at newspaper. And I triangulated the deaths by looking at 7 sources from all sorts of publications to make sure I could really corroborate and focus on a specific number. Now, in my findings, what I found was that, yes, this was a genocide. The 3 specific phrases I found prevalent within the pogroms of 84 were Sikhs are the traitors of the country. When a big tree falls, the earth trembles, and that the Sikh should be beheaded and that no Sikh should survive. Um, the way in which I did my textual analysis is that I looked at known key hate words or phrases within the prominent Hindu language. What I found was a severe spike in state broadcasting of Doordarshan, the state-owned TV station, as well as All India Radio, which repeated these slogans day in and day out. And what I found on the newspapers was exactly nothing. The newspapers refused to even acknowledge that any deaths of the Sikh individuals were happening. My main findings, I looked at 17 newspaper issues. I looked at 21 eyewitness testimonies. 16 out of the 17 newspapers, I expect one article of the Indian Express in November 2nd, did not report on the Sikh killings. The one issue that did actually accentuated the Hindu death, which was actually absolutely marginal compared to the thousands of deaths of individuals of the Sikh faith. Now, the big takeaway for me was that the newspaper specifically, although it is privatized and it is not state-owned like the radio and TV that I analyzed, there was a heavy influence of taking on a Hindu identity and othering the individuals of the Sikh faith. Um, Now, what I'd like to say in my very last seconds as 5 minutes has passed is that The Indian government can go on and deny that genocide happens, but when you look at the criteria and you look at the systemic warfare against the collectivity, it is apparent.